Hey, everybody, welcome into this amazing opportunity today. I haven't been doing the Mosaic podcast that much because I've been intoxicated with this idea of having these 50 conversations with 50 strangers, which started out as 50 conversations with 50 strangers until I posted it online and hundreds of people responded. So I've been inundated with hundreds and hundreds of conversations with strangers I never met. So I can't tell you how nice it is to actually have a conversation with somebody that I do know right now. I had the honor to be on Simran's show. Simran is 1111. And if you want to know anything about her, just 11:11. She has a magazine that is gorgeous. She has a podcast that is gorgeous. She has a TV show that is gorgeous. There's a lot that she does. And just if you would check out 1111 Mag, you'll find it. Or if you go to 1111.com, you'll find it as well. Let me just introduce her to you because normally in the 50 conversations, I don't do introductions. And so I'm a little bit raw on these introductions. But I want to first introduce you, and then I want to share an experience that I've had with her. And then I want to bring her in live and here, okay? Simran's a recognized speaker and catalyst for love, compassion, and humanity. As an example for a new world experience of aliveness, she advocates for visionary and mystic embodied within each person. Through creating and sharing free, conscious, uplifting, and inspirational media. To support this humanitarian effort, become a patron of hers. And it'll all be in the show notes how to do that, okay? Simran is the #1 rated archived syndicated host of Voice America's 11:11 Talk Radio, host of 11:11 Interviews, TV, and publisher of the Nautilus Award-winning 11:11 magazine. She's the author of Conversations with the Universe, of Your Journey to Enlightenment, and Your Journey to Love. She creates art, books, and online courses to bridge humanity's experience and expression. She's a TEDx speaker, the creator of a one-woman show, The Rebel Road, connecting the dots from what was to what is. And as an example of a new world experience of aliveness, she advocates for the visionary mystic embodied in each person. She's a busy woman. So I'm very thankful that she's here with us. I want to share with you, I was introduced to her through my friend and her friend, Diane Van Zandt. And Diane told me as I was preparing to go on a road, this was all pre-COVID, I was about to take a trip around the world, that there was somebody that I had to speak to because she had done something very similar to what I was doing. If I told you I wasn't prepared for our conversation, it would be an understatement. Because what Simran did is she blew the cover off of what I thought was my reality. And it happened in a simple statement that really is not that simple. The statement was, you will be fine if you realize that every person you meet is you speaking to you about you. Sit with that for a minute. Every person, every situation is you speaking to you about you. How would that one thought change you? I certainly know what it did to me. And so there's a lot more that I'll put in the show notes that I want to say, but I can't just sit here with her right here in front of me and just talk because that's not what I want to do here. I want to hear her speak. So Simran, welcome to the Mosaic podcast. It's such an honor and joy to have you. And by the way, you are podcast 100. So that is like, I've been saving that for someone special, and I'm so happy that special person is you. How are you today?
I am wonderful and honored and delighted to be here. And that was a lot of words to describe me, but truly, I'm just your friend. I'm simply your friend.
and you have no idea how much that means to me. because that's what I feel also. There's this beautiful, beautiful connection that I feel to you, even though we hardly ever speak, even though we don't see each other, even though we've never met each other in person. There's just something about the beauty of your energy, of who you are, that just radiates through you into me, and I feel it. And I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the mirror.
You're so welcome. Simran, tell me about like your early life, just sort of to get a reference of how you came into this world. What did your parents do?
I I am an Indian child. I was reared in the Sikh faith. My family came to the United States for educational purposes with a plan to go back and never did. I have had an extraordinary experience as a grown-up for far too long. And that set me on course to rediscovering how to be a child again.
Wow.
And I've had a very ordinary life. I think I'm a very ordinary person, but I have had some extraordinary experiences. And I believe we are here to create extraordinary lives. And so
Yes.
that is my intention, to make certain that this life is experienced as an extraordinary one, not just individually, but collectively.
So it's so interesting because, as you know, I wrote a book called The Mosaic, which we talked about on your show.
Beautiful book.
Thank you so much. And one of the beautiful realizations that I had in that book was how absolutely beautiful the ordinary is, which was not something that I actually believed in before. Like if you would ask me, do you want to be ordinary or extraordinary? I would have always said extraordinary. And I would have said, I really don't want to be ordinary. And I found that when I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, would you like to be ordinary? Would you like your kids to be ordinary? Most people say 1, 2, or 3, with that being the lowest, things they could choose. When I ask them if they want to be extraordinary, they say, 10, 12, 20, 50. And so I ask them, if ordinary is something you don't want to be, why do you want to be extra of something you don't want to be? Why?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. You know, growing up and in my teenage years and in my young adult years, if you had asked me what my first worst fear was, it was to be average or ordinary.
Yeah.
That was the thing that terrified me. And I think the reason that it terrified me is because I grew up in the fashion industry. And in the
Oh,
fashion industry, it is always about standing out. It is always about being different. It is always about being, the fashionable trend. It is not about being the one so-called left behind, which is the way I viewed average and ordinary. And what my spiritual journey has taught me is that it is the ordinary that you find the extraordinary.
yeah.
So, that whole thought has completely turned around as I've gotten more mature.
Yeah. And there's so few people that love that. So I think that's what bound me to you so beautifully, because so few people actually see how beautiful the ordinary is. But I always say to people, what's more beautiful than a sunrise? And you can see it, you can even predict exactly the time it's going to happen every day. And it's completely ordinary, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that spiritual journey that you talk about, and tell us about growing up too quick and then coming back to being, and I understood you to say you grew up too quick, that you became an adult quickly. Maybe I was
I
not
did. I
understanding.
started working when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
I worked in my family business from the age of 4, and I worked long and hard hours. And I did so primarily to get love, because I was taught the harder you work, the more love you get.
Wow.
And so I was the best little worker you could possibly see from that age. And what that did was really deaden me. It deadened me to feeling, it deadened me to my intuition, it deadened me to knowing who I was and what I wanted. I had no clue. I was just trying to be what they wanted. I just wanted to receive the love, which I think is typically what we all want. We just want to be loved. We want to receive that love. And we don't realize that, those caregivers that we have are doing the best that they can just to survive, that they're running off of their own fear. They're trying to escape their own fear of ordinariness and averageness, and they're trying to make lives, especially those that come from another country and are trying to start over and build a life, to give a better life to their children. And I kind of fell into this place where it wasn't about my life. It wasn't about feeling. It wasn't about even knowing what was going on. It became about being the center of their world in whatever way they needed. And that meant having basically a machine that would work all the time. And that's what I became. I became a machine. And the more that I deadened myself to feeling, to having emotions, to even knowing what I wanted out of life, I created further experiences that I call echoes that would keep triggering that within me. It would continue that self-betrayal until it hurt bad enough to finally wake up to it. And so I ended up in arranged marriage. That too became another place to be deadened and further lose myself. And eventually, when things get too hard, they have to crack. And it is one of the most painful and excruciating experiences for us to crack, but it is the most healing and most wonderful experience, because that is the ego death that has to happen. The ego that gets built as to who we think we are has to crumble for us to start to return to the essence that we once were born as. And so from that period, at age 38, has been the return to essence and the return to discovering what it means to feel and what it means to sense and what it means to choose the things that I want to do and to have a fulfilling life and to serve myself as well as others. I was taught to serve others despite myself. And so now it is this journey of an all-inclusiveness. And I think that is a message that we all need to take heed of. And that
Huge.
is part of the reason that this year has been this year. The 2020 vision is not to get clear on some visionary experience we're supposed to head out toward. It is the 2020 clarity of who are we internally? What do we want? What fills us up? What brings us joy? What does the soul desire, as opposed to any and all egos that were ever created?
So there is so much to unpack in what you just said. And I want to try and do that as gently as we can for people that are listening, because I know there are people that are listening that feel that crack of that ego that's starting to happen. People are losing their businesses. People are isolated. People who are used to running and escaping outside, doing all the things they do outside, or haven't been able to do that as easily and as readily. And they're confronted now with this sense of, if I can't go outside, I have to go inside, and I don't know how to do that. So for people who are experiencing the tap of the crack of the ego, I know on the other side, it's easy to say, boy, it's fabulous. And you're going to, it's going to be the most beautiful thing that ever happened. But in the moment of that tap, can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's not, you speak of it a little by saying how hard it is.
It's hard. It's excruciating. It is incredibly painful. You are trying to hold on to a mask that is so tightly glued to your face that to tear it off rips not only your skin, but it kind of rips your heart out, because you really believe that's who you were.
Yeah.
And then you're letting this place crumble. And it's not just a one-time ego death. This ego death, this is again and again and again. Every time you strip away an ego, there's another one behind it that gets to be stripped away. There's as many egos as identifications you have. I might be the 1111 publisher. I might be a radio host. I might be a mother. I might have been an ex-wife. I might be a daughter. All of those are ego identifications. And all of those egos have to eventually crack. There will be some experience in your life that cracks apart everything, even the most intimate, that would be mother or father or child. Every single ego has to crack, because ultimately we're here for the soul. We're here to be devoted to that part of ourselves. And the soul knows you're not any of these costumes you keep wearing. You are pure essence. And so I would say to people, as you're going through these ego deaths, especially as you're becoming aware that I'm sitting here, I'm feeling the depression, I'm feeling the anxiety, I'm feeling the angst of not being able to work or not do these things or not being able to get out. What you're really feeling is the rub and the irritation between the false that was created and the soul that is true. And you've been given the space and the time to stop to feel the rub, and how to get through that and how to rip off that ego mask is to truly feel it. And that, again, it's a hard thing for individuals to do, but that is the transformation. That's the place of alchemy. When people say they want to turn from the caterpillar to the butterfly, it is in emulsifying, it is in turning to mush, it is in crumbling and allowing what was there to completely dissolve and become something new. And so while you're going through the pain and the agony of letting go of who you are, embrace the one that you became, lay it to rest with the utmost tenderness and love and compassion that you can, forgive it for having been formed, and open yourself to the tenderness and the innocence of what is new that is being born. It is all a beautiful birth process, even though it looks like death.
So for the listener, if you hear nothing more than what Simran just said, and that's what you get from this podcast, and you were just play that over and over and over again, you've already gotten more than your money's worth right here, because what Simran is describing, I'm living through right now. And I thought that I was over this stage of living through this, because I thought I had a fairly good sense of who I was. And I thought I knew that I let go of who I thought I was so many times, and I had taken masks off. And then suddenly I see myself and I say, hold it, who is this guy? And what is this guy? And everything that seems like it's solid, that I built my foundation of my life upon now, because I thought I had taken away all the things that weren't solid, or is not solid any longer. And it is exciting, it's disarming, it's scary as hell, it's frightening, it's painful, because imagine looking at everything you believe and not recognizing any of it, and wondering now what's in front of us. What do we believe? Who am I really? Who is this person that was walking around as this person, who is this person isn't any longer?
And it's a beautiful place, Daniel, because as we become less of who we were, we tap into more of the truth that is what we are.
Yeah.
And I think, we have spent our lives trying to become things, become more of who we are, become all of these things. But in truth, it's not who we are, it's what we are. And we are the divine presence of source in human form. And all of the cracking and the stripping and the fracturing that is taking place is supporting us in reclaiming first that humanity that was lost along the way by all of the guarding of the hearts and the shiny intellect that we put on, and the personas that we used as our bling, and all of these things that we started to adorn ourselves with, we get to finally cast aside and to truly touch that beautiful sacred essence that's within, that rests at the very core of the high heart. We must walk through the door of our own humanity. We must crumble and cry at not only the heartbreak that we feel at our own self-betrayal, but the beauty that we get to experience in remembering and re-embracing the
Yeah.
sacredness of ourselves.
As catastrophic as it sounds, I love hearing you say it, because it's really the reality. I remember being in a room with people, and a friend of mine said to everybody in the room, and there was a big room of people, how many of you like change? And everybody raised their hand. And he said, bullshit. You like change you can control.
Yes.
But you don't like change that just happens. You're scared to death of that change.
You know what's ironic is we pay for horror movies.
Right.
We pay for thrill rides,
Right.
right? We pay to cliff jump and to bungee jump and jump out of parachutes. And yet we do that in our lives every single day and we fight against it.
Of course.
All we're doing, we're on an adventure high in human form. And if we can just look at every experience and every emotion in that way, it won't be as difficult to move through.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just we're not paying for it with our money and
Yeah.
in the way that we want to see it. You know, it's happening, like you said, because it's not in our control. And boy, do we want control.
We love control. We love control. So I'm sure you're familiar with Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, right? And so talk to us a little bit about how the events that happen to us are not necessarily good or bad, but the meaning we've given it to it. Because I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday or the day before, and I was telling her about what's going on in my life. And she was saying to me, so there's nothing to be scared of. You don't have to dominate it. Like, this is what you've been asking for. You've been asking to let go of everything you're not and receive this fresh new energy that comes into your body. And the receiving of that fresh new energy is actually a beautiful, beautiful feeling. But it feels like what we hold on, let me talk personally, and hopefully if that relates to anybody else, that's great. If it doesn't, yeah, you're putting up with my narcissism here for a minute. But it feels like what I've held on to is the pain of letting go of what no longer exists, rather than the joy of just receiving this abundant, beautiful light that I've been praying for to come into my life. Do you understand? Does that resonate with you at all?
We're on the bridge. Like that's the part that people don't realize is as we're letting go of who we were and we're opening to this beautiful newness of remembering. I don't call it becoming, I call it remembering. We cross a bridge. And on that bridge, we're moving into the unknown. We don't know what that new being or that new essence or that new experience is like. We've never been there. We've been there, but we don't remember being there.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do, or what the mind tries to do purely out of control, is try to frame the past or what we knew to do as behavior onto this new thing. And the past has a framework. It's in a box. And this new thing, it just oozes all over the place. It has no shape. It has no control. It's organic. It's not in any kind of container. It's just the love vibe that wants to flow and be free. And so you can't put spirit in a box or a bottle.
Yeah.
And yet we try to do that because that's where we've come from.
Yeah.
And as long as we can continue to realize every time we've slipped back into an old behavior or pattern, we can kind of stay humorous about it. We can start to understand, oh, I just slipped back into my unconscious self, because that's the bridge. We're moving from unconscious to conscious. And I have discovered that 99.99% of us on the planet are unconscious 99.99% of the time. Even the most conscious
Conscious.
of us, we really don't even know what it means to be conscious. We've
Yeah.
made it up, just like we make up everything else.
Yeah.
And so the greater presence we can bring to being where we are in the moment, whether that is crumbling out of the sheer pain of what it means to be human, or having a moment of bliss of slipping into this bubble of love that we happen to fall into unconsciously because we didn't know where we were going. Regardless, be present to where you are in the moment, because the moment takes you to the next moment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just the mind taking you somewhere, and that's interference. That's the detour. That's the scenic route that just creates more of the drama and the trauma. And so it's better to stay as close to the feeling and the sensation as you can, because that's what's going to lead you to the next step.
I really want the listener to hear what's just been said.
Mhm.
And how able are you to stay as close to the moment that you're experiencing right now as you can? without thinking about what's been or what will be, without thinking about how do I box this into something that I know and is familiar. What happens for you as a listener when you suddenly slide into a place that is completely unfamiliar and there are no boxes for you to put them neatly and arranged in your shelves? That these stories make sense to you and they don't make any sense to you. Can you slide into that and feel the joy of, like Simran said, we pay to go on those experiences, right? Of not knowing what's going to happen. But in our experience of our life, we pay for it with our resistance rather than our acceptance.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about how you experience pain and don't let it overcome you. Because I think part of the fear is, but that's scary, that's hard, that's painful. I don't want to go in there. And if I go in there, it'll overcome me.
I actually chose to go in there and I said, please overcome me.
Wow.
That is what I chose to do. I experienced what was trauma for me, what was the most extreme pain that I could have imagined in my life. And I am clear enough to know that we create and attract everything to our lives. And we create and attract what we attract for the purposes of our original intention, which is anything but human or our minds. It is a soul intention. It is the intention of our essence to reach a certain place. And when that trauma happened and I felt my knees buckle and fall to the floor, and I was crying uncontrollably. And this is someone who for 40 years did not shed a tear. For me to be
Wow.
able to cry in that moment to that degree, I knew if this is the place that I've been brought, there's something here for me. So I submit myself to the darkness. I will curl up in the belly of this wound and let the wound heal me. I will let myself feel what it is to feel all of this grief and anything it has to bring me until it tells me to get back up. I won't listen to the world's view of you're spiritual, you should get over it, you know these kinds of things, get on up. Or you only have this much time to grieve, it's time to get back to life.
Yeah.
Or get over it, just grieve once in a while, but stay busy. I wasn't going to listen to those voices. I knew that what appeared in my life, to be present to it, had gold inside of it. And
Wow.
somebody told me that true light was inside of that darkness, that all the light that I had been expressing, as beautiful as it was artificial lighting.
Wow.
It was radiant, it lit up a room, it shined on other people, but it wasn't real light. And I wanted to know true, real light, the kind of light that beams so brightly in the darkened space that it shows what the darkness looks like. And so that's where I went. And I experienced the grief. I experienced more tears than I thought I had water in my body. I cried for longer than I thought possible. I went through every emotion and then realized I'm no longer feeling now my grief. I've now tapped into another field of grief. And I realized that I was crying for the grief of my lineages that had experienced the exact same trauma. Because as children, we come in with the same generational trauma that existed before us. And if they didn't heal it and clear it, then the next generation is given the task of doing so. And if that generation doesn't heal it and clear it, then they pass it to their children. And it continues the cycle, which is why we live in the world that we live in today. There's been too much built up generational trauma. And many of us that are doing this kind of work, unknowingly, we are clearing trauma, not just for ourselves, but for our generations. And that is a gift we give by feeling it. And I didn't want this to pass to my children. And so I decided to heal it. And I was able to see back into history, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, many layers back of the same exact trauma that was experienced. And then that started to lift. And I started to realize that I was feeling this grief that was collective grief of the world. And I thought, if I can sit here and lessen the grief of the world to some small degree by letting my body and my consciousness be a conduit, by letting my sound be the sound that disperses it so that it is lessened in the world to some degree, then that is the purpose of my body, of taking form, of my life. And I stayed in that space, feeling whatever came, any emotions that followed. And for me, that was a 7-year process.
7 years.
And one day I woke up and it was as if my body, as if the emotion said, now get back to living, you have served.
Wow. What can you identify in that moment of shift, if you can, where one day it was part of the 7 years of sacrifice and being available to take on humanities and lineageal stuff, and the next moment where you were now okay to go back to regular life and live, not regular life, but you know what I mean, go into the life that you were meant to live for yourself now. What happened? Can you identify that moment? Was it, I know it was 7 years of just, but there's a moment where it didn't happen 10 minutes before, it didn't happen 5 days before, it happened in that moment. Was there something that happened?
I wanted to think that it happened before. And this is what I would tell people, whether they're on the bridge crossing from unconsciousness to conscious, or whether they are discarding an ego. You will have impulses to rise that are not the voices outside of you, but your own inspiration or your own desire to escape what you're feeling, or just the need to go do something. Because we're not taught to pause. We're not taught to sit or hold sacred the experience of life. And so there were moments along the way where I thought, okay, now's the time. I need to get up and I need to try. But
Yeah.
every time try to get back to creating the magazine, or try to get back to doing my radio show, or even try to write a page, my body would be completely exhausted, or I would feel a wave of pain. And it was as if the body was saying, I'm not done yet. I'm not done releasing what is inside of these cells. You can't get up yet. And there just was a day when I felt a lifting of energy to where the achiness, the density, the weight inside of my body just didn't feel like it was there anymore. And I was able to start to do tasks again. And you know, my experience is not the normal experience. There are very few people that are going to say, I will devote myself to the darkness,
Yeah.
and however long it takes, I'm going to stay there. I'm going to stay there for 7 years. I don't know of anyone else personally that's ever done that, but I'm an explorer. I'm a mystic. I'm someone that wants to know the internal workings of life and living and death and all of these things. And so I find that not only exciting and adventurous, I find that as devotional and sacred. But what we can do is, when we are having an experience and you are feeling the grief in the moment, or the anger, or the bitterness, or the resentment, or the rage, whatever that emotion is, give yourself 2 days. Like, really sit in it for 2 solid days and do nothing. Let it consume you, because you will feel a release even in that. And you will not just be releasing for yourself, you truly will be releasing for this world. What we see in terms of the hate and the animosity and the prejudice and the racism and the violence and all of the things in this world, it's all the pent up emotion that each one of us are clearing. What we're seeing in them is simply a reflection. They are showing us who we are. They're showing us more about us.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we do this kind of work.
Do you, in the work that you do now, guide people through that process?
I do mentor people through that process. And I don't mentor a whole lot of people because there's not a whole lot of people that want to go there. But the ones that truly do want to do that degree of soul work, I work with. And it's more so than just feeling that. The people that want to do this kind of work truly want to live their essence. They want to live lives of pure fulfillment. And to get there, you have to go through the valley of death. You have to release all of the darkness and the muck and the mire that's encrusted up around you to be able to rise up that mountain and truly see the sunrise. Otherwise, we get glimpses of it. And that's okay. That's a normal human life, to go through the ups and downs of life. But life doesn't have to be that way. You can either string out your pain over the course of a lifetime, or you can decide to just have it all in one meal, which is what I decided to do.
So now that you've sat and you had 7 years where you went through this, you know, I'm going to say almost unbearable pain, but it wasn't unbearable because you bared through it and you did it. Okay. But to most people, that would be an unbearable amount of pain to take on. But you did it, so it can't be an unbearable pain. It's bearable. Does it
We think
resurface? Does it resurface again and again still?
we think that that kind of pain, we think if we felt the tears that we haven't let ourselves shed, will kill us.
Yeah.
We think if we opened up the can of rage that sits inside of us, that it's going to kill us and somebody else. We really believe that that's the ultimate thing. You know, our fear is death. And I'll tell you the truth, a death will happen. It will be the ego death.
Yeah.
But that is the alchemy. And it is the underworld. It is another level of ourselves. And what I discovered through that process is, number one, my humanity, because we can't really touch our humanity unless we're willing to feel. But beyond that humanity, what I discovered was the animal that we are. There's an animal inside of me. It's raw, it's hungry. It has no sense of mind or control. I had to meet the animal inside of me.
Yeah.
Then I had to go past the animal. I had to meet the demon. We each have a demon inside of us that has created the challenge and the depravity that is in our world. We must meet these sides of ourselves. And once you are willing and can see the animal and the demon inside of yourself, you are given a glimpse of God. You are able to see the holiness that resides in you. And when you step out of that space, you can have nothing but compassion for every person that you see. You realize the beauty of every human life, regardless of what it looks like, whether they are a villain, a victim, or a saint.
Yeah. So I can hear the audience and the listener sort of rumbling here because what you're saying will shake people to the core. And I'm so happy you're saying it because I myself want to be shaken to the core as well. And I can hear people saying similar thoughts that I would say too, which is, but I can experience that without going into that hole. I can experience that like all my life I've experienced some of that. And I keep going and then the rug gets pulled out from under me and then I go, oh my God, I got to experience it again. But you went in like a crash course on it, so to speak, right? You did it. So what I'm wanting to know from you now is once you've gone through that crash course, if we could say to people, give us 7 years, we're going to take you through the valley of the shadow of death and you will fear evil, but you will fear no evil also. Um, I think there are people that would walk through that if they knew that they were done after that period of time. It's almost like COVID. COVID, we could put up with it for a little bit of time if we knew there was an end to it, right? But then people don't see an end and they start to get like COVID creepy sort of things, right? Um, is is the experience you experience now free of that darkness, or do you still go into that darkness now and fight battles?
I feel free of the darkness because I absorbed it. I think people run from it. And when you talked about, I could do this without having to go there, and I experienced this, and then I come out and then I have another experience. The reason you have another experience is
Just,
because you put a cap. You escape the place once you start to feel it get too hot.
yes.
So that's the reason the experiences keep happening. I came out of that place with such a sense of neutrality and equanimity around the world and around things. I don't have things that trigger me. There's nothing that riles me up. There's nothing that brings me down. It's a very calm space of being able to hold the world and hold myself in complete love. What I did discover, because I never realized it was going to be 7 years, I just stayed. But what I realized afterward is it had to be a 7 year process. And the reason it had to be a 7 year process is because it's our original 7 years that really forms the basis of who we are. 0 to 7 is the body. And it is when we take in all of the sensations and the energies and the emotions and feelings of everything around us. We have no emotional intelligence at that point. That body has not been built. We have the intellectual body doesn't get built until 14 to 21. Emotional body doesn't get built until 7 to 14. So all we are is this body. And we start to soak up all of these energies and we carry them through life. And as these difficulties and challenges hit us from 0 to 7, from that point forward, we keep creating echoes of those experiences throughout our lives, which sends us into these waves of, oh, I'm hitting sadness again. Well, if you look at your life, you have hit the same experience every 7 years.
Mm.
And the reason you hit that same experience every 7 years is that is the body's way to remind you, go back to the beginning. The origination of these sensations is in your body. Your mind will not be able to explain it. Your emotions are not there to try to figure it out. It is all about feeling the sensation. And towards the end of my 7 years, it was not thoughts, it was not emotions, it was aches and pains, it was sensation. It was almost as if it was a deconditioning process that took place, and the energies inside my body had to dissolve and be absorbed so that the body vessel could clear of the energy that it was holding. That's the purposes of staying in it for the long haul. Otherwise, the energy in the body will continue to keep recreating the same scenarios and the same situations. And that's what ages us. That's what creates our illness. That's what hinders us in the future and compounds our belief systems of looking at life in a certain way. And so I would say to people, any amount that you can do is great. But if you are devoted to your soul as opposed to devoted to your ego, then give yourself the space and the time. And it is not something you can do alone. You do have to have someone walking beside you, because there are moments where you dip down so low that you wonder if you want to be here anymore.
Yes,
And
I'm
it's
sure.
necessary to have a sacred witness during those times, not for someone to fix it, not for someone to pull you out of it, but for someone to truly be the sacred witness, to say, I'm right beside you. I'm walking beside you as you go through here. You're not alone. That is a very, very important piece.
And I don't know many people that do that. And so the fact that you are here, the fact that anybody who is listening to this, myself included, might be interested or is interested in doing that. Tell us how that would look in terms of how you participate in that process with people. Is that something they can find on your website? Is that, I know you a little bit. I've searched around a little bit. I haven't seen that place in your materials. Am I just not finding it because I'm not ready to see it? Am I like, where is that?
It's the mentoring that I provide. And there is a 1 year option specifically for people that want to do that work. Again, it's not something that I outwardly
Talk
advertise or promote, because I know that that's not a place most people are at. And I just trust that people that truly want to do that work and understand the collective impact that that could have by doing that work, we'll find that place and want to do that work together. And that purely looks like connecting every week or every other week, just as a touchstone, just to have someone to confirm where you are and what you're feeling, because I've been through every single step of it, to not only move through the dark, but also be able to open that flowering of essence in the process. I did that afterward. I went through all the darkness and then opened the flowering of essence at the end. It can be a simultaneous process.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time because I was in the experience. But now looking back, I see it could have been done simultaneously. And so it is more so to guide. And that is the only reason that I can guide, is because I've been there. And I understand the degree of love and the space to hold for someone, and the energy and the prayers and things that are my part to do to support that journey and being a little bit easier for the individual walking through.
What's the biggest surprise you've seen in the work you do?
People truly become free. And I think it's more so their own shock that they can be free and that they actually experience it. That's the thing that is kind of awesome, because I don't think people really believe they can be free. They want it and they seek it and they search for it and they grasp at it. But when it finally hits them, it's shocking.
Huge, huge. And one of the things that I'm noticing now in my life is I'm living my life and watching my life more astutely with, 4 eyes instead of 2 eyes, because I have the glasses. Um, is that there's certain stories that I made up that I believed that were really real until those stories aren't real anymore. And then when there's a shock at what happens when those stories aren't real and what is real. And how does that look? And how do we let something new come in? And is that just another story that's occupying the space of the old story? And how far do stories go down until there are no stories?
And that's part of the process too, deconditioning that mental body. We have to unwind what was wound.
Yeah.
The wound is something that was wound around us. And so, it is unwrapping the stories. It is really becoming cognizant of the beliefs and the thoughts. It is understanding the amount of emotion that we've held down and held back. It is not giving the honor and the sacredness to the body that it truly deserved. It's the temple, and yet we have treated it like an old book bag that we throw around
Yeah.
unconsciously.
I, I don't know about other people, but for me, my story has always been, um, so I heard the story of a man who said, I'm going to destroy your house tomorrow. And the people in the house said, because they were tearing down the houses in this neighborhood. And the man in his house came back into his house and said to his family, we have a little bit of a dilemma. They're going to tear down our house. We've been meaning to finish painting the living room. And there's a corner of the living room we haven't finished. Do we finish that before we tear the house down? Or do we just let them tear the house down? My wife's answer would be, I would finish painting the house because I want the house to be remembered. I want to remember the house as perfect. I want to do everything I can to make this moment, and live this moment in its entirety. My answer was, like, if they're tearing it down, why bother? The house is going to be gone. And that's been the way I've treated this body for all these years. I said, this body is going to be taken. It's going to be torn down. It's not something I've ever take with me. So it isn't really the important thing. So I live my life in this realm up here that is above the body, that is, comes into the body to function, but is really not involved in the body. And the dilemma, the trauma that I'm in, not trauma, but the stories that are being disrupted right now is, but you're here in this world. What are you doing here?
And as long as we're living from the neck up, which is the way the majority of the Western world or educated world lives, then we are not embodied. Then
yeah,
spirit is not in us, it is outside of us. We have separated from spirit and shot it out of the body. And I think that what my experience showed me was what embodiment looks like. Spirit has to be drawn into the body, and spirit is inside of every single emotion and every single thought and expression that we have. And our minds want to judge it and separate what spirit is and what spirit is not, but spirit's all of it. And so when we can really embrace all aspects of ourselves, every experience, understand that every emotion is simply a color in a crayon box, and that we are not here just to color with the bright ones on the front row, but that we've got to pull out the dark navy that is, the envy, and the dark green that's the jealousy, and the dark red that's the rage. And we've got to pull out all of those colors as well and learn that we color with those. When we can embrace the full coloring box that we have, then all of a sudden we allow spirit to fully inhabit us. And it's not that we're going to express those emotions outwardly in the world. It's that we chose form to be able to have all of the experiences, emotions, and sensations that essence cannot have in the unseen.
Yes.
That is the purpose for being human. And so we have to allow essence to fully experience all of humanity for us to have done our purpose here. And that experience simply is an experience internally. It means feeling the volcano within as it rises and erupts as rage, not as it comes out, but just how it feels like in here. And then you can also feel the bubbling of bliss as it overflows and expands within the body. One is the opposite polarity of the other. So as far as you go into the rage that you feel is the extent that you will go into the bliss that you have the capacity to feel.
I love that. Before we even did this, I made the header for your show, and I called it a saying that you said, which was, hold on one second. I want to get it right, and I can't move this over for some reason. So isn't that interesting? Oh, we are an experience experiencing ourselves.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that idea of we are an experience experiencing ourselves, and what that would do to our whole reality if we only realize that. What are you most what are you most saddened by, if anything?
I don't know that anything makes me sad. I'm heartbroken by the state of the world.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, it's this amazing art form of texture and dimension and color. And so it's kind of a paradox, because the very things that break my heart are also the very things that inspire me to
Yeah.
create. And
And
yet
so
that's what it is. It's that paradox, but it's the willingness to feel both. It's the willingness to allow the heartbreak in enough to be able to then create beauty from it.
for people that are looking at this world right now that haven't gone through that 7-year pocket that you've gone through, is there something you can say that will bring hope to them? Is there something you can say that will that they can do that can bring themselves to the space where what we see in front of us of this experience that we're experiencing is something that we have to experience?
I would say that what you're experiencing in the world is simply a mirror to show you what you must feel within yourselves. And that for you to be able to see it, it has to exist within you. And I would more so want to speak to those people that are spreading love and light and positivity and consciousness, and really implore them to step into alignment and to do the work. Because Anyone that is in this line of work is already at a more awake and aware position and a heightened frequency and energy. So any degree of animosity or prejudice or dislike of anything that's going on, and we could take the example of our politics right now, any degree of that that you're feeling and throwing out there into the world as a negative energy, you are amplifying the very thing that you don't like,
Yeah.
simply because you have more power. The unconscious person is clueless, they're innocent. Their power is not as strong in creating this reality. But the ones who understand the principles and the laws, the ones who understand how energy works, for them to drop into an unconscious place and dislike one candidate or the other, or fight against something, or think that activism is a charge forward, they don't realize that they are the very match that's being struck to start a fire.
That
It
they're
is
trying to put out.
it is our purpose to find neutrality.
Yes.
And that is what I would implore people to do. Find the place of neutrality. And if you can't, do the forgiveness work, do the compassion work, do the love work, go inside and find your face in the very one that it is that you are against.
Simran, I want to thank you. It's amazing how quickly an hour passed. I can't believe it. I, for one, am going to be contacting you about seeing how we can do some work together. And for other people who want to contact you about working, I'm going to have all your links in the show notes. But is there one place in particular that people can come and find you that's where you check all the time?
They can contact me on either website. Simran at imsimran.com is my email. And for the people that want to do the work, I'm honored. I'm honored to be a sacred witness. It is a joy for me to support individuals in that way. And for people that don't feel as if they have it within them to really do the work in that way, the paintings that I paint vibrationally will work on the subconscious.
Love it.
And so simply have a painting somewhere where you see it or meditate on it or look at it from time to time, that too in its own way will start to work within you.
I love it. I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you so much for the work you're doing. I will be in contact with you one way or another to figure out how we do something together. It is that point in my life where I am so ready to just sit with what I have to sit with, to just get through what I have to get through, and to love it and adore it and embrace it and honor it and experience it, because I think it's so powerful. And so for any of you who want to share with me in that, I very rarely say that this is someone I'm going to work with on air, because I don't normally feel that for somebody, but Simran's someone I feel very drawn to do that with. If that means anything to you, contact her, reach out, get a painting, read her books, go on, subscribe to her magazine, listen to her talk, her interviews. Invite her into your life, because you will not be sorry that you did.
I'm honored. I'm honored, Daniel, and I love you, and I think what you're doing is extraordinary. I think your book is fabulous,
Thank you.
and I love how you're creating more conversation in the world. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have space and time with you today.
It is my complete honor. Thank you so much. And for those listening, please contact her. Okay. Simran, thank you again for your time. Is there any one last thing you want to say before we head out?
I will simply share my mantra that individuals can use for themselves, and that is in love, of love, with love, and as love. We are in love all of the time. We are held in a field of love that surrounds and always caresses us. We are of love. You are composed of the molecules of love. They course through your veins. They rest inside your bones. They are what are your organs and your skin. And we are here with love. Love holds us. It is you resting in the palms and in the heart of love in every single second. You simply are here to embody as love. And as love, we will change this world. So in love, of love, with love, and as love, be well.
Fabulous. I can't think of anything else to say to end better than that. So I'm going to say thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Simran. God bless you. Wonderful time. Ciao.
Thank you.